I am Adam Weil, partner at White Rabbit Group. Welcome to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we share knowledge, experiences, and motivations from creatives and entrepreneurs. I'm excited. We have Dana Arnold here, who is the Chief Growth Officer and a partner at Hiebing, which is a full-service independent marketing agency with offices in the Midwest and the Southwest. They've been in business over 40 years, 100% employee-owned. I believe right now they're over 150 employees, and they even won previously Small Agency of the Year. So this is obviously a great shop, a lasting group of folks. And some quick background on Dana. She's been there for 15 years, started as the director of PR, and has stepped into a chief growth officer a little over 5 years ago. So really excited. In this episode, we're going to talk about what a chief growth officer actually does inside an agency. We'll cover how growth connects brand, a new biz, and client expansion, and why the best agencies treat growth more than just sales. So I'm really excited to dive into this, and why it's also kind of a leadership function that can improve the agency's positioning and messaging, and even help drive performance over time. So Dana, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm ready to get after it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with just defining things. So, when you look at the agency landscape today, like, how do you define what a modern growth function is meant to do?
So I think at Hiebing, we're a little different. I think there are some traditional things you would expect that would kind of tuck up into what a growth role is responsible for. Certainly organizing what we're doing from business development, organizing what we're doing from an organic growth perspective. A couple of things that I also get to lean into here, and I think is so important today as a kind of in the modern marketing landscape,
Hmm.
is making sure that there is commercial clarity in what the agency does, what our promise is, what our positioning is,
Mm,
making sure that that story and that narrative is incredibly clear and consistent across, not just how we present ourselves um, proactively, but how our clients experience us, every day. Are we delivering on what that positioning piece is?
mhm,
And then for most agencies, I'm sure no different than us, our greatest expense and our greatest resource is our people.
mm,
And so the growth function at Heaping and what I get to manage is also making sure that our people are growing.
mm,
So I'm very responsible for the retention side of the piece, making sure that training is happening, making sure that kind of growth paths are really clear, identifying new opportunities of where we might need some new talent to tuck into that.
mm,
But our people are our greatest superpower when it comes to growth, and
mm,
so how we can use them as multipliers of growth. So it isn't the function of one person or one person in kind of our brand group directors. It really
mm,
permeates the whole agency. So those are kind of
mm,
the big the big four. And
mm,
as I think about kind of that the modern growth function, also really it's a system. And as I think about it over the last 5 years, we've really built out what that system is, and the
mm,
system gives us the opportunity to. I always say, like, sometimes the role growth sounds so fun and exciting, and
mhm,
also as part of it, um, the system should be boring because the system should help you be repeatable. It should
mhm,
help you know
mm.
what to do even on the busy days. It's kind of that consistency that you're showing up with every day to help grow the agency.
Yeah. Wow, it's so much broader than I think what most people think of when they hear growth. I think most people hear sales when they hear growth.
Yes.
So let's keep kind of going down on that. Like, what do agencies get wrong when they treat growth as maybe just like a business development function and not like a leadership function?
Yeah. Um, I do think some agencies can over-index on the net new. Like I want to see this pipeline, kind of the sporadic hustle that can happen with new business, as
Hmm.
opposed to really understanding your current client landscape and making sure that, you know,
mm,
I mean, our industry is just it's so chaotic.
mm,
Isn't it so much nicer to grow an existing client that people business I think we've spent over the last 5 years a lot more time focusing on what's happening from an organic perspective, than we have, not that we've lost what we're doing from a new business perspective, um,
mm,
but we wanna see momentum happening in both of those areas, and so we have leaned in a lot more
mm,
aggressively to really understand, um, how our clients are doing, how our teams are performing, how, our clients' bottom lines are performing, and so I think
mm,
kind of, not just thinking about kind of the new that's happening, but the growth of the existing, I think um is a really big piece. And then
mm,
I think the other element is are you are some agencies I think are just chasing revenue.
mm,
It's to your point, growth is so much more than sales. I think when you're focused on that revenue, you're losing the opportunity for kind of that durability
mm,
of what an agency can bring. And when you're chasing revenue, you might bring on a client that man, a team's really not going to enjoy this work, but
mm,
we need the money, and you're kind of forgetting about the importance of what culture does and what culture brings. And so, like,
mm,
how are you shaping those opportunities that are going to help grow grow your culture, kind of
mm.
grow the positioning or story that you have out there.
Yeah. So you're talking about so many things. I mean, culture, client or I should say employee retention,
Mhm.
also client retention.
Yep.
There's a lot of things. And I think some people that might be listening to this that are also agency leaders might look at their agency and go, well, I have specific people that are handling each of those functions. And so how
Yeah.
do you think about defining the ownership as far as what a growth chief growth officer should directly own versus what they should influence? Like how do you think about that?
Sure. When I think about what I am most accountable for, I think that's the system. Like, I am accountable for the system, and I'll give a little bit more meat to that about what I mean by that.
Sure.
Um, but I'm responsible for the system. I think where I influence is in the habits within the system. I don't have the total ownership of that, but so
Mm,
what do I directly own? I directly own positioning and how disciplined we are with the story that we're telling, making sure that proactively we're telling it the way that we should. It's reflected in all of our own channels that you see,
mm,
and where I think that thread doesn't get pulled all the way through sometimes at some agencies, and are we delivering on that day in, day out with the existing clients that we have?
mm,
It's just like a hook in the water unless you're unless you're actually delivering what that story is with everyone. I am directly responsible for our pipeline. So we do have a director of business development, and he's incredible, and he certainly is driving a lot of what's happening in that pipeline. But I consider kind of the truth of that pipeline to be what I'm accountable to.
mm,
Are we clear on our targets? Are we clear on how we're performing at each of the stages before we get to a conversion? Kind of all of
mm,
those things are definitely part of what I do. Is Nate is his name? Is what Nate is responsible, that system that we have for business development? How are we clear on what that is? Are we performing consistently within what that is? And then again, kind of in the last 5 years, I think what this role has really leaned into is responsibility for organic growth. So I'm directly responsible for that, and I have incredible right hands that are part of that part of that too. Each of our brand group directors and managing their client relationships. There's kind of consistency with how we're assessing the health of our clients, assessing the health of our relationships with our clients, and just what that kind of consistency looks like too. I think that's been one of the kind of in the secret sauce in the last 5 years is really leaning a lot more into that piece.
Got it. So you're not necessarily doing the entire company's job, but you are monitoring these certain metrics and habits. I like how you phrase them as habits that other people in the organization are executing on a consistent basis. So what is a typical, day to day or week to week look like for you when it comes to overseeing all that? Because obviously there's a lot of different areas of the
Yeah.
company. You have to make sure these habits and metrics are hitting the goals and the targets, and you need to be working with the team to make adjustments if things are not
Yes.
happening. So give us a little snapshot into what that looks like. How do you manage all that?
It's a lot. It is a lot, and I think, the I don't think you are at an agency at, like, I mean, my entire career I've worked agency, and I don't think you can succeed in an agency role for that long if you don't really love variety and hustle that comes with it. I think there's a certain pace around that. And so I think if anything, what I have had to do in this role is to really appreciate that pace needs to be there, but also kind of consistency and room to breathe and all those things also need to be there. So um, from a day-to-day perspective, I think um, looking at this kind of the snapshot of a year, I think we have a lot of things with really consistent cadence to them. Quarterly we're doing our client health assessments with those teams. From a marketing perspective of the agency, monthly we're sitting down and looking at how things are performing for what we're doing, and then it's the kind of that day to day of the meaningful one-on-ones with the people that are overseeing these really important components to what this entire system is.
Got it. So those are your habits.
Those are my habits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. I, I want to talk about brand for a
Yeah.
second because why I want to understand, like, why is an agency's brand positioning such a critical input for growth, and how do you know if it's working or not working?
I love this because have focused so much on so our positioning is speak in data, dream in color, and those two components we have a rigor to understanding how we're moving the bottom line for our clients that we serve. But it's in kind of the balance of both of those pieces of harnessing that data, but also really leaning into the magic of what marketing is too. And so that's what our promise is. Our promises to the clients that we work with. But that story, it's the filter for a lot of things. And so as we think about that, our positioning, it can help us determine which opportunities we're pursuing. Where we deserve to win, where we think we should be winning. When you hear our positioning, we're not going to be the agency if you're looking to chase an award. That's not the agency that we are. If we were looking to drive some momentum with the business, if you're looking at results, like that is business results. That's very much where we're focused, and so that allows us to have a filter around that. And I haven't even said this word yet as a growth officer, I should say it, but it also protects pricing. I think when you're looking at literally what that is, a strong positioning, I think creates pricing power. It showcases the value that you're going to bring, and I think we are in an increasingly commoditized industry. AI is like butane on that fire, and so I think positioning and story is more important than ever. And so not only do you need to define it, make sure you're differentiated within that, but you better be delivering on it. I think and that's why this organic piece of what we have has been so critical to knowing if we are doing that. And I think with the really strong story, it should be obvious what your value is when you're entering into a client relationship. Everything that we're showcasing on our website on our socials, all of that should be the proof of what that positioning is. And so that's
Yeah.
very much why we are focused there.
And give us a snapshot into Hiebing's positioning there. What do you think you guys have figured out, or figured out for yourselves that helps you with that positioning? Because there are a whole bunch of agencies out there. It's a sea of competitors. So how do you really stand out and attract the right folks, the people that you really want to work with?
I think we I was listening to the gentleman you would interviewed, or at least put it up a handful of weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, this I feel like we're circling some similar clients here that we're looking for, you know. We love challenger brands, you know. We love underdogs. We love clients that are being outspent, because I think that is where we can outsmart what's happening instead of outspending that. And I do, we chose long ago, before clients were ever asking about data, we chose to dive into the deep end and really invest there. And we invested in, thank goodness, we were ahead of the curve by the time clients started to ask the questions related to it. You know, we were able to kind of lead them into those things, as opposed to follow. And I think we know pretty quickly if a brand is going to be a good fit for us, based on how transparent they're willing to be. You know, if there's not a lot of transparency there from the jump, um, like, we sweat knowing that we're driving results. And so if we're not going to be able to have that transparency with a client around knowing sales, how sales are going, knowing how an LTO is performing, that won't be a good fit for us, because we want to know that we're making a difference in what we're
Mhm.
doing.
And where does that show up the most? Like, does it show up in your website? Like, where do you feel like it's maybe the most important to represent that? Is it the website there? Is it maybe when you pitch? And because
Mhm.
you have this sort of narrative, that really cuts through the noise there. Um, where do you feel like the brand positioning shows up the most? Shows up in the most important way.
I think it shows up in the conversations. I mean, we will every agency, kind of shows, hopefully every agency is showing that their work is driving results. And I think that is a shallow look at what's there. I think where we are most powerful is when we start an actual engagement and conversation. There is one of our core values is curiosity, and if you are not a curious human being, do not apply. As I think as we show up with prospects or with clients, we are asking a lot of questions to really understand the business problem we're trying to solve, and how we can get after that in the most efficient way possible, and exciting way, and creatively exciting way too. So I think it's in those initial conversations where it shows up most, because the
Hmm.
prospect will know we have done our homework. I mean, we are showing up hungry and ready to understand what we have the opportunity to get after.
Right, right. Yeah, I like that a lot. And asking those questions, the curiosity, I imagine, sparks that.
Yeah.
So Heaving has been around for 40 years. You've been there 15 years. I'm sure you've seen some significant change. I think right now there's a lot of agencies that are reevaluating their positioning, if they want to
Yes.
go more niche or go more broad or what they want to do. And so what are your thoughts around navigating that change? Because it sounds like right now you have like a really good structure and system and habits, but for an agency that's just kind of approaching this now, maybe with a fresh lens, where should they start?
Oh, that's a big question. I think, yes, story. Make sure that your story is differentiated. I think first and foremost, that is something that you should absolutely sweat. Thinking about thinking about building a system, it is not. I think many agencies are like, you know what, I need a new business person, that's just going to be, smiling and dialing and getting that
Right.
going. I think it's really looking at the totality of what the system is for growth. Looking at how much your leadership is aligned to committing to that growth. I think it is transparency around growth. We're incredibly transparent
Mm,
around what our gap is that we're trying to close for the year. We are clear on what our financial and profitability goals are for the agency, and our entire team knows that. It isn't just something that we know at the leadership team. So I think people feel very part of the growth process, even if they're not directly responsible to it. And
mm,
it's like sharing is caring. So making sure that
yeah.
we have this information out there so that everyone feels like they're part of it, even though a handful of us are really responsible and accountable
Mm.
for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not a lot of agencies that are 100% employee owned, so I imagine that
Mhm.
plays a factor, right?
Yes. Oh, I mean, our independence means so much to us. I think
Yeah.
it I think one of the again, we don't talk about pricing and margin and all of that very often, but I do think because we are independent, our margin is our superpower. I mean, our margin allows us to invest in things differently, whether that is in technology or talent or whatever that may be. Our margin gives us resiliency. Our margin gives us long term thinking instead of short term decisions. And
Mm,
I put our independence. I mean, our independence is a very huge part of how we've been able to create that.
mm. And how you talked about transparency. I think some agencies would say they're transparent, but you and I both know there's levels to that. Like
Sure.
how transparent what do you think is the right level of transparency there?
We ask ourselves as an executive team, we will occasionally sit down and say, "Are we being too transparent?" Because transparency is aces when things are going great, right? When you're able to tell this great growth story and you're able to forecast your year and showcase these numbers going up and up and up. I think transparency is like, oh, are we being too transparent? Is when
Mm,
you're looking at a year that's not going to be your strongest and still
mm,
being honest around that with the team. And I think what we haven't deviated from that in the 15 years that I've been here, and I'm sure it was happening
mm,
far longer before that. We don't want a workforce that feels surprised by anything. We want our team members
mm,
to feel a large level of trust. We're asking a lot of them. This is a
mm.
crazy industry,
Yeah.
and a team that is willing to take risks and do some of these fun, big, creative things for clients. There has got to be a really strong bedrock of trust that's there, and I think that's what our
Yeah.
transparency around that has given us. And we are crystal clear on the gap we are closing. We're trying to close, and we always have one at the start of a year. We're always looking at a goal that's greater than where we start our year.
Mm,
And we check in with our teams, the entire team, the entire agency quarterly around that, of just like
mm,
how we're progressing around it, the different things that have added to the health or the strain of what's happening
mm,
from a numbers perspective. But I think that um, that just gives it that transparency. I think showcases that we are all partners in this. I think we
mm,
have
mm,
almost 40 partners in the agency. We have a really large partnership structure,
mm.
and I think transparency is a big piece of that when we are asking people to literally be a partner in what it is we're doing.
Hmm. How do you measure your own effectiveness? Like how do you when growth touches so many different areas, like how do you evaluate whether the growth function is actually working as intended? Or are there
Mhm.
certain metrics or just other signals you're looking for?
Um, we always get new questions from new team members that come in, and when they hear my title, they always say, "So how big does the agency want to get? Like how what
Mm,
are your?" They see growth as like a number of employees, instead of how like measuring bottom line for me in looking at this role and the leadership team and looking at it. Do we have better clients? Do we have better margins? Are we doing better work? are our people getting better at what they do? And I think those 4 indicators, there are lots of different ways to look at those 4 pieces.
Yeah.
Client and reputation, signals that we're seeing. So as we're looking at retention of our clients,
Mm,
um, organic growth of what we're seeing from our clients, advocacy, how strong is that? We say all the time, like our when we look at our year of new business, the largest percentage of how new business should be coming to us is through referrals. Like, it
mm,
absolutely should be, and that is a very warm lead that's coming in. For anyone that does new business,
mhm,
that it is so much easier and faster to get to a decision of yes when that is a warm lead that's come in, and so referrals should
yep,
always be the biggest piece of that pie for what we're seeing. But I think we're
yeah,
also looking at, some of those commercial health signals too, I think is another big bucket that's there of just, like, the quality of the pipeline that we
mm,
have, our conversion rates, the average size of clients that we're bringing in, because quality isn't just a budget thing by any means. It really needs to be a great cultural fit. It needs to give us access to do great work, that our
mm,
team loves to do. And then I think there's like the internal health signals that we look at. What is our retention rate looking like?
mm,
We do stay and exit interviews, so we're kind of understanding the quality of what's inside of those conversations that we're having
mhm,
within that. And yeah, I feel like those are kind of the big 3 buckets that at the end of the day net out to, better clients, better work, better people, better margins.
right, right. Have you have you ever consistently been in a position where you're not hitting your goals and had to make a major adjustment?
I mean, we took a step back this year and just we did a more thorough client assessment than we have ever done before. We were meeting quarterly and kind of discussing it. We did a really big deep dive to understand just some of some of the pockets where we just needed to improve. Just
Sure.
no agency's perfect.
Yeah.
I think doing the hard, honest truth work to understand where you are not showing up the way that you wish you could, I think is it's tough, especially in an environment where there can be many egos at play. But I think kind of stripping that
Sure.
back and just saying we need to be honest with our assessment of how we're doing around this promise that we made to a client when we brought them on. Are we
Mm,
delivering what we said we were going to do for them? And so I think when we've had moments of struggle, it has it's just taken really, really honest an honest look at what's happening inside of that business.
yeah, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I really do think a lot of agencies, um of course, there's always the negative Nancy's out there, right? Like the folks that post a lot on LinkedIn and
Yeah.
say that the world is falling, and we both know there's lots of success stories out there still, but it is good to hear that you're taking an honest look and at yourself and trying to figure out what you can do to improve. Any tips there for folks that are also doing the same thing? I think every agency's got egos. How
Mhm.
do they navigate through that in a meaningful way and come out the other side better?
I mean, we do some pretty honest work here. I think we're big fans of Brene Brown, and
Mm,
so that kind
mhm,
of showing up wholehearted, having really leaning into vulnerability. I think as a leadership team, we do a lot of soft skills work on those things. And certainly since I've moved into this role where the leadership team is doing much more of that. And I think it
mm,
allows us to get to that honest conversation far faster. And yes, are we trying to dig into, how we're navigating AI and how it's showing up literally in the day-to-day, work world that we have. Yes, we're doing that, but as important is working on how each of us is showing up as a human being when we come in here to lead and to do this work. Leadership is hard,
yeah,
period. I think leadership at an agency. is intense. It's intense, and I think we have done a really good job at kind of taking care of our people in helping them understand boundaries, helping them understand that they can show up kind of who they are, be vulnerable in those moments,
Right.
and we're still committed. We're still committed to all of them.
Yeah. Love it. I love the insight there. I appreciate it, and I think it's a good message for everyone to hear. Tell us where people can find you and follow along with your journey and Heaving's journey.
Yeah, you bet. So Hiebing.com, Hiebing.com is our website. It's the same across all of our socials too, really active on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook primarily. But my contact information is also on the website. So if people ever want to reach out and have a conversation, better understand kind of how we're doing things or what's going on in their ecosystem, happy to do that too.
Great. Well, thanks, Dana. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Pixel Perfect podcast, where we go down the rabbit hole on the journey and motivations of creatives and entrepreneurs. Stay tuned for more stories to come. Until next time.